Alright folks, here's some more sparring, recorded on the same day I did the recent Longsword sparring video, which you may not have seen because YouTube's subscription system is broken. What? It's true. By the way, if you keep missing stuff, check the video description down below. There's links to my Facebook and Twitter page, where there's a full list of uploads. So here, I was trying something a little weird. Rapier versus Longsword. Keep in mind, this is totally experimental, and I'm not very good at rapier fencing. Really strange. You notice right here, I was retreating pretty hastily, and I only barely parried that cut. And this was kind of a very sloppy passata sotto. It's the name of the technique. It looks a little different, more like this usually. But, well, in full gear it doesn't look quite as elegant, and I'm also not necessarily the most flexible guy. Okay, excuses aside, that was clumsy and terrible. Sue me. Anyway, so this is the major problem with Rapier against Longsword. The cuts are pretty hard to deal with, and I didn't throw any rapier cuts of my, well, in fact I did throw like one or two, I think, and I stopped it pretty quickly because the problem is, even if my cut connects, chances are the longsword cut hits me at the same time or soon after, and guess what, a longsword cut is a little worse than a rapier cut, so not a good trade-off, like right there, although this was actually turned into a thrust. So the interesting thing is both are quite vulnerable. As the rapier user, I feel pretty vulnerable to longsword cuts, and the longsword user is worried about, well, about constantly having the point of the rapier in their face, which is, you know, pretty threatening and discouraging. And when they do charge in, you know, since I have enough space there, I can actually move back pretty effectively. So this is what happens pretty often here. I disengage and dip under the longsword blade and then thrust. So here's an interesting point about the arm in front. The reason I had the arm in front here is just a habit from rapier practice. With rapier against another rapier, it makes sense to have the arm there because you can actually push the rapier aside and deflect a thrust that way. Here, not so good, because the arm is actually an additional target. In the hit before, I'm not sure the longsword would have hit my body, but it definitely got my arm. So, yeah, pros and cons to that. It's good to keep the arm unavailable as a target. So here, same thing again. Disengage, dip under, and there comes the thrust. By the way, if you're wondering how historical that is, a longsword versus rapier, I don't think would ever have happened. Rapiers and longswords technically coexisted in the 16th century, but by the time the type of rapier that I'm using here had established itself for use in self-defense and dueling, the longsword had largely fallen out of favor for that kind of application. So very uneven and ahistorical pairing, but certainly fun, that is my opinion. Just very different from rapier versus rapier. And longsword versus longsword, and none of us practice mixed weapon fighting regularly, so as said, very experimental. Trying to be very careful there, but yeah, this I messed up. I missed with the thrust, and then the cut got me. By the way, sadly I didn't get any good GoPro footage from this. It was all misaligned angles of doom. So here again I disengage as the displacement strike comes in, and then I do the thrust, and this is the worst attempt at a passata sotto. It looked even sloppier than the other one, and I got a tap on the back for my trouble. So that completely failed, but it was pretty funny. So let me know what you think about this. Mixed weapon fighting is not something we normally do because the historical sources generally don't cover that. There are very few exceptions, but usually it's the same weapons paired up. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a good one, folks. Oh, and don't forget to check out my Patreon, Facebook, and Teespring pages.